In Peru, protests continue, demanding a national constituent assembly, as well as the release of the former president Pedro Castillo. In the United States, Bolivia's former de facto government minister, Arturo Murillo, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for the crimes of international bribery and money laundering. And also in Colombia, the Vice President Francia Márquez presented the Ministry of Equality and Equity, representing the government's will and the commitment to advance in the transformation of the country. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. Rallies and road blockades spread throughout most of Peru, where protesters demand elections, a national constituent assembly, and the release of the former president Pedro Castillo. The convening organizations indicated that in the morning there were only 4 protest actions in the southern regions and the city of Lima, but during the course of the day they increased to 25 in different regions. According to a report of the Superintendents of Land Transport, the road closures included the interoceanic highway that leads to Brazil. The organizations and unions reiterated that the protest actions seek to exert pressure to demand the resignation of Dina Boluarte, new early elections in 2023, and the referendum on the relevance of a constituent assembly, as well as the reinstatement of Pedro Castillo as the president of the nation. On Wednesday, Bolivia's former de facto government minister, Arturo Murillo, was sentenced in the United States to 7 years in prison for the crimes of international bribery and money laundering. The court announced the sentence after finding conclusive proof of the millionaire overpricing in the purchase of tear gas in 2019. Murillo pled guilty, as did the rest of his accomplices involved in the case. For its part, the Bolivian government initiated a civil lawsuit before the United States courts against Murillo and his accomplices to recover the money employed in the tear gas purchase, which amounts to $2.3 million, in addition to preparations and reparations for the damages. The government of Bolivia also said this is the largest conviction in the history of the country.
It is not ruled out that upon completing his sentence, Arturo Murillo will be deported. And we are also going to request the immigration status of this person, officially speaking, in order to know what legal situation he will have after completing his sentence. And at the moment, Arturo Murillo has been sentenced to 7 years. It is the highest sentence that has been given in this case. The previous sentence was of 5 years for being the leader of the gang, 5 years for being the ringleader of the gang. This destroys any possibility or thesis that indicated that he had negotiated some situation, that there was information in the middle. The judicial decision is very clear. This is not a political persecution. And we want to say that this information, I believe, should be known by all the Bolivian people, so they know with which people the coup of 2019 had been incarnated.
And now let's go to Brazil. Lula's government announced on Wednesday the resumption of More Doctors program. The Secretary of Primary Care of the Brazilian Ministry of Health, Nécio Fernandes, informed about the resumption of the More Doctors program, cancelled during the administration of Jair Bolsonaro. The official affirmed that the disposition to start the program in all municipalities as soon as possible, and specified that the priority will be the hiring of Brazilian doctors with registration in the regional councils and to offer vacancies to nationals trained abroad, so that subsequently other positions will be filled by foreign doctors. Likewise, Fernandes indicated that after the closing of the program, most of the vacancies left by the Cuban doctors have not yet been filled. The Colombian government presented the Ministry of Equality and Equity from the municipality of Itzmina in the department of Chocó. The Vice President, Francia Marquez, informed that after the approval by Congress, she will lead this portfolio and emphasize that it represents the government's will and the commitment to advance in the urgent transformations Colombia needs to become a country with equality. Marquez said this ministry is essential as an instrument to strengthen transformative policies that peoples from different communities have been waiting for so long. In Cuba, the U.S. Embassy resumed visa and consular services in Havana. Local media said the reopening could help Cuban citizens to travel to the United States in a safe, legal, and orderly manner. Let's listen to what some Cubans have to say about the resumption of the migratory services in the U.S. Embassy in Havana.
Very well and happy for me and for all of us in this situation because we really care a lot and we're filled with anxiety just thinking about going to another country so far away, the amount that costs for the Cuban family.
The possibility of access to migratory services from the Embassy of the United States in Havana until this moment is officially inaugurated, and from 2017, Cubans had to go to a third country, first to Colombia and then to Georgetown, Guyana, in order to access, for example, the possibility of reunification with family members through the Family Reunification Program.
Let's take a short break now, but first follow us on account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The last of the faithful to pay their respects to Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI filed past his body in St. Peter's Basilica on Wednesday. Among them, cardinals, bishops, and religious leaders and political delegations from around the world. Later on Wednesday, Vatican officials were to place Benedict's body in a cypress coffin, the first of 3 coffins, along with a brief written summary of his historic papacy, the coins minted during his pontificate, and his pallium stoles. After the funeral in the piazza, the remains will be carried back into the basilica, where the coffin will place inside a zinc one and then finally into another made from oak. In keeping with Benedict's wishes, his remains will be placed in the crypt once occupied by the tomb of Saint John Paul II in the grottos underneath the basilica. John Paul's tomb was moved upstairs into the main basilica ahead of his 2011 beatification. Russian President Vladimir Putin had announced his willingness to hold a telephone conversation on Wednesday with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan to discuss issues of common interest. Such an intention was confirmed by the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, who noted that the talk had been requested by the Turkish president. The 2 leaders are set to address issues concerning bilateral relations and the current situation in Eastern Europe. Ankara intends to get the presidents of both Russia and Ukraine to agree on a deal regarding energy exports to Europe, very similar to the grain corridor deal signed months ago. And on Wednesday, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that a frigate sent to active duty armed with new hypersonic Zircon cruise missiles will head to the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans, as well as the Mediterranean Sea.
This ship, armed with Zircons, is capable of inflicting pinpoint and powerful strikes against the enemy at sea and on land. The feature of hypersonic missiles is the ability of reliably get around any modern advanced air defense systems or missile defense systems. The main efforts of the frigate's crew will concentrate on countering threats against Russia, maintaining regional peace and stability jointly with friendly countries. During the exercises and training, the crew will practice the use of hypersonic weapons and long-range cruise missiles in various conditions.
On Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks with the President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., in Beijing, pledging efforts to make a comprehensive plan for the future development of bilateral relations. Xi expressed the hope that both sides will maintain regular and strategic communication and remain committed to becoming good neighbors that help each other, good relatives that share mutual understanding and close bonds, and good partners that pursue cooperation and the win-win results. For his part, Marcos said he is looking forward to maintaining close communication with President Xi and strengthening cooperation in all aspects to open a new chapter in the comprehensive strategic cooperative relationship between the Philippines and China. Following the meeting, the two heads of state witnessed the signing of a cooperation document on the Belt and Road Initiative, agriculture and fisheries, infrastructure, finance, customs, e-commerce, and tourism. And the navies of Russia, China, and South Africa will conduct 10 days of naval maneuvers in the Indian Ocean off the South African coast. The South African National Defence Force said the drills will be held off South Africa's coastal province of KwaZulu-Natal from February 17th to 24th. This year, the drills are expected to cover the area from the city of Durban to Richards Bay, which are separated by 160 kilometers. The South African Department of Defense announced that according to preliminary plans, the exercise will involve 2 Russian warships. In particular, the drills include artillery, force protection, and air defense practices. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. 35 people were killed in a double car bomb attack in central Somalia on Wednesday. The attack was perpetrated in Mahas, in the province of Hiram, and most of the deceased were civilians. According to local media, the terrorist group Al-Shabaab could be behind the events, as the organization has carried out numerous attacks against government troops, the African Union mission in Somalia, and the UN humanitarian operations. This group has also claimed responsibility for several terrorist incidents in neighboring East African countries, including a massacre in Nairobi, Kenya in September 2013. The supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, stressed the importance of women's participation in the country's decisions. The Iranian leader pointed out the need to employ women at various levels of the working and institutional life of the Persian nation. He also made reference to the labor inequality of other societies in which women's salaries are conditioned by their gender and not by their abilities. The head of state made these statements during a meeting with prominent women in various fields of national life in relation to the proximity of the so-called National Mother's Day. And South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered on Wednesday a review to suspend the military agreement with his northern neighbor in case of another military incident. The Korean president ordered to consider suspending the September 19, 2018 agreement if North Korea carries out what he called another provocation by invading South Korean territory. It further ordered the establishment of a joint drone unit to perform multi-purpose missions, such as surveillance, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare, as well as the establishment of a system that can mass-produce small drones that are difficult to detect. The military agreement in place is intended to avoid accidental military confrontations between the two nations, establishing a security perimeter in which military actions are prohibited. And Bread Freedom is the title of the artistic act that united a group of Syrian and Lebanese singer-songwriters at the Opera House in Damascus to pay tribute to the memory of the martyrs of the Syrian Arab Army, friendly countries and allies who sacrificed their lives in defense of Syria against the terrorism and its sponsors. Let's see.
The collective interpretation, Bread Freedom, ratified the solidity of the close ties that unite the member countries of the Axis of Resistance, materialized their millenary civilized culture that resisted the terrorist attempts to erase it, and reflected their deep appreciation for the sacrifices suffered by their troops in the battle waged by Syria and its allies against terrorism, occupation, and foreign military intervention.
Music plays a human, cultural, and educational role, and this has been the message that we have always carried through our artistic work that never stopped, even in the most critical years of the war.
Today we share this loyalty with all the brothers and friends that the blood of their martyrs have been mixed with the blood of our martyrs on the Syrian soil, where they sacrificed their life to free this land from terrorism.
Syrian and Lebanese singer-songwriters also gave individual interpretations of patriotic songs that, like the song Bread Freedom, made the public vibrate in an atmosphere of unity and enthusiasm, marked by the defiance of Western plans against the brotherly countries of the resistance bloc.
Art carries a message of love that unites people and enlightens hearts, and we hope that our message will reach people all over the world with love, for there is nothing more beautiful than this human feeling, and today we honor this love by paying tribute to those martyred heroes of the Syrian Arab Army. I was invited to participate in this work, and I really welcomed the idea of transmitting this message of unity and loyalty to the whole world, especially from the capital of the Arab civilization, Damascus.
Today we honor the memory of the martyrs of our homeland, and by doing so, we show that we remain united in defense of the homeland and fighting to overcome the common suffering that we endure, and therefore I am very proud to participate in this activity and this outstanding artistic work.
Art is one of the means by which Syrians show the world the true image of a country that managed to defy the plans of those who believed that by instituting a policy of terror, they could erase their millenary cultural identity. This musical gala, like many other artistic demonstrations, is a clear example of this reality.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.